This all around, I get it. All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Physician Father Interviews. My name is Dr. Stephen Freiberg, aka the Dad Anesthesiologist, and I'm very excited today to have on Dr. Alex Mechaber. Now, Dr. Mechaber is probably the guest who I've actually technically known longest of any of the guests that I've had on this show. I don't even know if he remembers, but we're probably coming up on 15 years of technically knowing each other. When we first met, you were still the housemaster at the Stanford Residential College, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Dr. Mechaber is an internist, or was a practicing internist, with a long career at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. He was the endowed chair for medical education, and he was the senior associate dean of medical education. And now he's revealed to me he's technically still a professor emeritus at the University of Miami. It's amazing how career changes. He's currently the Associate Vice President of Licensure for the NBME, the National Board of Medical Examiners. So he's had a really cool career. He's married to a wonderful Dr. Mrs. Mechaber, as she's known, who's also an internist, has two beautiful daughters, and we're going to hear all about his path in medicine and fatherhood. So Dr. Mechaber, thanks so much for chatting with us today.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. It's hard to believe that it's really been 15 plus years. That's amazing. Time flies. Look at you now. Wow. Such an accomplished physician in your own right. It's a joy to see.
Well, thank you so much. So tell us, how did you end up, now that I'm thinking about it, as the housemaster for the residential college? And that was a position I think you were in for at least a few years, no?
Indeed. So it's interesting. I was a resident assistant when I was an undergrad at the University of Miami back in, 1986 to 1990. I was an undergrad. I was a resident assistant at Eaton Residential College, one of the residential colleges on the university campus. And the university campus, as Stephen knows, had 5 residential colleges, had faculty families that lived on the ground floor of all of them. And we were there to provide, the faculty families were there to provide serve as a resource, serve as mentor, serve as sort of the family away from home, if you will. So I was an RA, a resident assistant when I was in college, and then left for residency and med school and residency, and then came back. And when we came back, we started at the new faculty orientation in 1998, and Halit, my wife, and I were getting nostalgic about what it was like to live in the residential colleges. And they said, we like to have faculty still to come back and serve in these roles. And we thought to ourselves, wow, that would be really fun to do years from now, after we've been on the faculty for a long time and are gray and very wise. And little did we know, there were people at the undergraduate campus who recognized that we would be potentially good residential college masters and started inviting us to events. And essentially what I came to realize, it was sort of the recruitment process to become a resident faculty master. So we literally had moved back to Miami in 1998. And a year later, we were asked to serve as associate masters at Eaton Residential College, which was the residential college that I was an RA at. Wow. So it was the first time in history that they had a faculty come back as a resident master in the actual residential college where I was as a student. So that was terrific. We spent 3 years at Eaton Residential College as the associate masters. Our first daughter was born there. And then we were asked to become the headmasters at Stanford Residential College, where we met you. And we were at Stanford for 5 years. So we spent a total of 8 years on the undergraduate campus. Our second daughter was born while we were at Stanford. And it was a tremendous experience. In fact, my daughter still remember it to this day as some very fond memories. And it was one of those jobs that was above and beyond our med school jobs, because clearly we worked at the med school during the day, and this was nights and weekends, but was the most invigorating experience, because I would come home exhausted from working at the med school, and I'd have 40 people cooking in my kitchen for a community dinner and having talks with really amazing intellectuals coming into my living room to have a conversation with students, and being able to mentor and guide students early on. And of course, pre-meds loved it, because here you had the 2 doctors from med school faculty, living in your residential college, being able to provide guidance about what to do. So it was probably one of the most invigorating 8 years of my life as a young faculty member, and to this day, sort of an experience that we don't forget for sure, and my daughters don't forget. And we moved out in 2007, I guess, to civilian life, and bought a house and lived the regular suburban life. But it was great. It was really a terrific 8 years.
Such a unique experience. So thank you for sharing that. And I think you hit on pieces of it in explaining that, but tell us a little bit more about your medical journey. How was it that you decided to go into medicine, and then sort of your training, eventual clinical practice, and even what your practice or career looks like now?
Sure. I've always wanted to be a physician. My mom, my grandmother, remember, I think I was 5 years old and I was asked what I wanted to be. And I kept saying, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a good doctor. I have no idea why I thought that. Certainly I didn't have physicians in my family, but I certainly had a connection to my pediatrician and thought this was a great opportunity to help people and guide people. And I never really swayed from that much. In college, I'm a musician by training. I'm a percussionist, actually. So for a while, I thought maybe I would join a rock band or become a percussionist. And then my mother said to me, "Listen, I just want you to know that I'm not going to be supporting you." And I said, "Okay, pre-med it is." So, so I stuck to the pre-med path and went to undergrad at Miami, med school at Miami. Loved my time. Because of my role models in med school, I decided to go into internal medicine. I thought I was going to become a subspecialist, but I like too many fields within internal medicine. So I decided to become a generalist, a jack of all trades, master of none. I did a primary care internal medicine residency at George Washington in DC. Spent 3 years there. Was selected an additional year to serve as the chief medical resident, so I stayed an additional year. And then we came back and joined the faculty in 1998. And throughout my 22 years at the University of Miami, I had a number of different roles. From the first year I got there, actually, I was a pure hospitalist,
Okay.
24/7, working in the hospital with a nurse practitioner and a PA. I didn't have any teaching roles. I didn't really have any roles. I was teaching the PA and the nurse practitioner.
Right.
They would say to me on a regular basis, "What are you doing? You need to be teaching the med students and the residents, not us." And I said, "Well, that was the job that was available at the time." And so after that, Mark O'Connell, I don't know if you remember him, Steve. He was the senior associate dean for medical education before me. He had just been promoted to that role and decided to bring us on board and help. So I started getting involved in coursework. I was the course director for GPC, the primary care clerkship, early on. I did that for a bunch of years. And then a lot of my career was really serendipity. It was, hey, the dean of curriculum is retiring. Do you want to be the dean of curriculum? Yeah, okay, that sounds like fun. Sure, I'll do that. The director of clinical skills is stepping away. Do you want to run clinical skills and GPC? Yeah, sure, that sounds like fun. So I did that for a while, and then slowly, sort of moved up the ladder until one day I was, afforded the opportunity to become the senior dean for medical education. And I did that for 10 years. It's hard to believe that it was actually 10 years, but that was overseeing all of the med student programs, from admissions to curriculum to student affairs, with a great team, obviously.
Sure.
And then I started thinking about what my life and career might go next, thinking about a pivot. Frankly, I was getting a little burned out about being senior dean. And I had been doing work with the national board for over a decade, writing questions for the STEP exams, writing questions or writing cases for the clinical skills exam as part of the USMLE series. And an opportunity became available to join the team as associate VP with um, a boss who is a dear friend of mine and has been a friend for a decade at the national board. And he says, "I'm looking for somebody to be my partner. Will you come join?" And we were thinking about a move because maybe we'll get into this. We're kind of at the stage now where our younger daughter's a senior in high school. She's about to go off to college in August. We're going to be empty nesters.
Wow.
And we said, wow, this could be an opportunity to do the next adventure. And I figured if I didn't join now, that I might not be able to join the NBME and wouldn't have that position available the next year. So decided to jump on the chance to do that. And here I am. The pandemic hit, so I never actually had to move to Philadelphia, which is where the National Board is located. The plan was I was going to commute this whole year while our younger daughter finishes high school. But the pandemic hit, the building closed. We're all working remotely. It's working just fine. And so the joke is I'm the director of the NBME South, a division of one. Me.
Very, very cool. So you touched on your daughters a little bit. Tell us a little about your fatherhood journey, your dad journey, and how you developed your family, how you met your wife, and what your family looks like today.
Sure. My wife and I met in med school. Halit was a year behind me in med school. We met actually working on the student council convention. I was the chair of the student council convention in med school, and she was on the committee. And I think we started dating right when she was about to take step one of the board. So it was finishing second year. And thankfully she passed because her mind clearly wasn't on step one at the time. And then we started dating then, and I went off to residency at GW. She came to GW a year later to do the same residency program, primary care internal medicine. We got married after her internship year, so after her first year in Miami. And then we were, residents together, and that was interesting. We managed never to be on the same team together. We managed to figure out how to be on the same call nights so that we could actually see each other during residency, but we were never on the same team. It almost happened once. My last month as chief resident, I was the ward attending on a team, and she was technically going to be assigned to my team, but we managed to switch it off so that she wouldn't work on my team, and we managed to keep our boundaries that way. But we've always worked really well together, and have had shared patients over the years together, have worked in the same clinic. We came back to Miami in '98, and within 1 month, we had a new house, new car, new dog. The dog was our first baby.
Sure.
And then a year after we moved down, we joined the university residential college system. So we moved down there, as I mentioned. We have 2 daughters. Our oldest is actually 21 today.
Wow.
Well, somewhere today. She's a leap day baby. So
Okay.
she was born somewhere between yesterday and today this year.
Fair enough.
But she's 21. She's a junior at the University of Michigan. She went to the other UM. I haven't been able to convince any of my daughters to become Miami Hurricanes like we are. We are diehard Miami Hurricanes. But she's loving it, and Michigan's a great school. So she's up there doing mostly classes remotely, despite being up there.
Sure.
Because of the pandemic. And our younger daughter is 18, senior in high school, trying to figure out where she wants to go to college, and Michigan may be an option for her. So I might have both my daughters at the other UM. We'll see.
Fair enough.
And she goes off in August, and then it's empty nesters with the 2 dogs, and that's it. Fatherhood has been, one of the most rewarding parts of my life. Yeah. It's an amazing experience, as you know. And it comes in different waves and different stages. I remember early on when they were babies, it was hard for me because they didn't need me. I couldn't feed them. I couldn't breastfeed them. I couldn't do those kinds of things. It gets better every year. That's for sure. At least it was for me. Sure. Interesting phases. And I think my professional life and my parenting has always been sort of a juggle. And people talk about work-life balance. I talk about it as a juggle, what ball is in the air at the time. Yeah. And now as they're older adults, it's really taken on a new meaning for me.
Speaking of children.
Yeah.
Say hi, and then guys can keep talking. So this is Dylan.
Yes. Hi, Dylan.
Dr. Mechaber.
How are you?
Dr. Mechaber taught Daddy how to be a doctor. Is there something I can do for you? Yes.
The water's not cold.
Your water isn't cold? Mm-hmm. Oh, these are big struggles. Can I fix your water in a few minutes? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Say bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Dylan. Great to see you.
So
too cute.
Yeah, they're a handful, but they're great.
Oh, it's amazing.
But yes, indeed, the juggle. I've heard lots in talking to other physician fathers, the work-life balance, the work-life integration. Juggle is a good one. But yeah, it certainly is amazingly rewarding, and it's crazy because, you know, obviously don't remember the exact ages, but certainly remember your daughters were much younger. I recall helping you guys find entertainment for their respective bat mitzvahs,
Yes.
and now
Yes.
one's almost done with college, the other's about to start it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's very different. It's like I said, it sort of goes through all these different phases. And now I'm in the phase where, they're college students or they're high school seniors, and I spend most of my time worrying about their safety as young women. Um, it's funny, I was never overly, um, concerned necessarily about their whereabouts every minute of the day, and I am more so now than ever.
Mhm.
Um, I spend half my time on the Find Your Phone app, looking exactly where they are at every minute of the day. It's a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what is your favorite part about being a dad?
My favorite part was really getting to see them grow and develop, developing into their own people and their own personalities and their own ideas, and having philosophical conversations with them. And then also realizing, oh my God, she has all my idiosyncrasies and oddities. She's definitely my kid.
Yeah,
Or this one is your kid, Halit, for sure.
yeah. It's amazing how early some of those things start to rear their heads, so to speak, because we've similarly already noticed, in one or the other, and where they respectively may have come from. But wow, that's amazing. And what do you think
Absolutely.
is well, maybe now you may have already touched on having to worry about children's safety as they age and become more independent, but what do you think is the most challenging part of being a dad?
I think it's that. I mean, right now, I feel like, as a father, you feel like your job is to protect your children at all times and to make sure that you can adhere to their safety and be on top of that. And, once they leave the house, you're kind of hoping that they're going to use good judgment and use the things you've taught them over time. In fact, I remember the last 6 months before Gabby left for college, I kind of felt like, okay, I got 6 months to teach you everything you need to know in life before you leave the house.
Right.
And clearly that's not the case, but you hope
Sure.
that you've provided enough of a foundation for them to make good judgment, and even when they don't, to support them, but hope that the outcomes aren't catastrophic.
Right, of course. And so have either your children are old enough, a lot of the guests I've had before, children are much younger, yours are old enough that they can really have starting to have meaningful discussions about career plans. Have they expressed any sort of career path interest at this point in time?
Um, I will tell you that our older daughter rather, she pretty early on expressed an interest in art. I mean,
Sure.
she, since she was 2, was drawing and so forth. So she knew that that was her path.
Wow.
And she went to Michigan's art school. She's in the Stamp School of Art and Design. She's a graphic designer. She went to the Design and Architecture High School when she was in Miami. So she knew kind of that was her path. And, she does, she's super talented, but of course I'm biased, and does really cool stuff. Half the time I look at her designs, and she'll whip it out in 5 minutes, and I'll be, wow, that looks fantastic. And she'll say, no, that's crap, Dad. That's terrible. Let me show you the good stuff. But that's her goal. Her goal is to become a graphic designer, probably, design some magazine. She's looking for internships now in New York and wants to, go to the top graphic design companies in New York and hopefully get a job. So she's had a pretty determined path and always knew that.
Yeah.
Our younger daughter is the complete opposite. She's a math and science kind of girl,
No.
but has no interest, she says, at this point in being a physician. None of our kids have want anything to do with being physicians, even though we, tried to bring them into the cool parts about it. They, as you know, they spent a lot of time with us at the med school and doing events with us so that they were integrated in our lives. But they, I don't think, have any interest in being physicians. So the younger one is going to pursue likely exercise science or kinesiology with
Mhm.
the intent of maybe becoming a physical therapist. So kind of cool. but very different.
And if either suddenly said from graphic design or kinesiology said, dad, I think or mom, I do think I want to be a doctor. What would you say to them, or what would your advice be?
I think the same advice I've always given them, which is you want to be passionate about what you do. You want to be able to have a job that you wake up every morning and you're happy to go to work. And it's not a job. It's about who you are, and it's an identity.
Mhm.
And if that's medicine, terrific. I would never sway you away from that. I mean, I think there are a lot of people, given the way healthcare has changed over the years, that say, don't go into medicine. It's terrible, blah, blah, blah. But I still think it's the best profession around
Mhm.
for the reasons that we went into it. Sure, there's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy and BS that goes with our jobs, but there's BS in every job.
Very true.
And at the end of the day, I want my kids to be passionate about what they do. And if that's medicine, great, I'll support it. If they're not passionate about medicine and passionate about something else, then I'll support that too.
So I think that's a very reasonable outlook. And you've spent an extraordinary amount of time specifically in medical education, in graduate medical education and undergraduate medical education. What are some of the positive trends you've seen develop in medical education in the time you've spent sort of in that space?
I think, on the one hand, I think the students who go into the field these days are exceedingly they continue to be exceedingly bright, but they're very driven and passionate about issues that affect health equity and the community. And that is really powerful and meaningful. And I think they think about things in different ways than I thought of when I was going into medical school. To thinking about, how do we address those kinds of social issues that really affect healthcare today? And I think those are wonderful. I mean, they really are extremely passionate about those issues and resourceful and want to do good. And and despite all of the issues, at the end of the day, I think are going to be sort of the transformative leaders that we need in healthcare. With that comes a different attitude too, though. And I think one of the things that drove me crazy a little bit about medical education was the sense of entitlement, the sense of, I want to do things on my term, on my time, when I want to do it. And I didn't grow up in that kind of atmosphere. I mean, when I went to med school, you were told, show up at such and such time and be there or else. And some students have a very different attitude these days. It's like, well, I'll show up if it's convenient for me, if I want to, if it fits my schedule. And I'm kind of old school that way, so I kind of have an issue with that.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I think with medical education, both graduate and undergraduate, a lot has been recognized about probably some of the ways we were doing things not so well. And a lot of that might be related to, work-life balance or integration or quality of life and wellness. And I totally respect and I'm on board for that. But as someone who served in a chief resident position and scheduling position, and folks were sometimes very, overwhelmed or felt overworked, and I did really care about their well-being, but at the same time, it's like we got to take call. Like it's residency. I don't know what you want me to tell you. So sometimes finding that balance can be its own challenge. So
I hear
other
you.
than some of the changing attitudes of the good and for the bad for some of the students, are there any changes in medical education that you think have been sort of a negative trait or a negative direction?
It depends, I think, on who you ask. I mean, I think there's certain faculty who feel like, the pendulum has swung. We're clearly more learner centered and we care more about making sure that students learn things in certain ways, in a way that maybe was very different than years ago. The advent of technology, which is huge and prominent in medical education these days. And frankly, though, I see those as only pros. But the older faculty who kind of, remember the way things used to be, haven't necessarily embraced it. I think there are lots of things that medical education has focused on now that's incredible. The issue of looking at health system sciences and health equity and value-based healthcare and all the things that are going to make ultimately our healthcare better are now being introduced in medical school, whereas they weren't introduced years ago. And certainly, probably when you were in school, definitely when I wasn't in school, they weren't introduced to the same level they are now.
Right.
With that, however, comes some trade-offs. Med school is still only 4 years. In some cases, we'd like to truncate it even further, but something has to give.
Right.
So the rest of the healthcare system, at least the accreditation system and the regulatory system, when it comes to what's assessed on licensing exams and then residency programs, also has to accommodate that.
Mhm.
And it's taken faculty some time to sort of figure that out. Before I left Miami, I was involved in helping to create the new curriculum that just got started this year called Next Gen MD. And its focus was really to truncate some of the basic science content into what's really needed to practice medicine. So what are the fundamentals that you need? And then begin clinical training earlier. So start the clerkships earlier. And faculty had a tough time with that because it meant that we really had to sit down and look at what we were teaching and say, okay, these are key things that you need to understand to take care of a patient. Whereas these things, they're interesting, but you don't need it. And you can look it up and it's trivial minutia.
Right.
So I see that as a positive trend.
Sure.
I'm not sure all the faculty would agree with me.
Right. And so what are your thoughts now? And I don't know if I even have all my information straight, but so USMLE Step 1 has moved to pass fail, is that correct?
It will transition to pass fail January of 2022. Yep.
Mm. And the other change, USMLE Step 2 CS is gone, or what is the plan for that?
Yeah, it's been discontinued, and there's really no plans to bring back a standalone clinical skills exam. So the plan is to look at what's currently assessed within the USMLE steps now
Sure.
and look at ways to enhance clinical skills assessment within those existing steps. So it might be, looking at different kinds of ways to assess it, different item types, different tools, but to use the existing steps to do that.
Sure. Fair enough. Well, it's been a crazy time for sure. And I just want to thank you for taking the busy time out of your schedule to chat with me. And you and Dr. and Mrs. Mechaber have always been huge influences and mentors of mine. And I think I was explicitly paired with Dr. Mrs. Mechaber as one of my advisors in my senior year of medical school. And I always appreciated, she, I think, understood my approach to things, which was kind of just, I just want to put my head down and work hard and take care of people. And she helped guide me in that way and make sure I didn't make too many people angry along the way. So it's great talking
Nah,
to
you
you.
kidding? She adored you, and I appreciate this opportunity. It's been fun to chat with you.
It's been great. Give my best, everyone, to your daughters. Stay safe at NBME South, and continue enjoying the warm Miami weather.
Thanks, Stephen. Great to see you. Great to chat with you.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
I will.